The front door creaked open, a sound so faint it was almost swallowed by the hum of the late-night news spilling from the living room. I sat in my usual chair, the glass of whiskey untouched beside me. The news anchor's voice, disembodied, filled the space, but my focus remained fixed on the shadows dancing across the ceiling. The ticking of the clock was louder than the news, louder than the silence between us. She was late, and I felt the weight of that lateness settle into the air like a thick fog. The faint sound of her heels, clicking softly against the hardwood floor, reached my ears. Hesitant, almost deliberate, as if she was trying to sneak past the sleeping beast that sat unmoving in the chair. The clock read 1:37 a.m. Her routine had become predictable, even if it had shifted in ways I hadn't fully understood until tonight. The moment I spoke, my voice cut through the tension in the room like a blade. "Late," I said, my tone sharp, though I remained unmoving. She froze in place, her hand gripping the edge of the door frame, like it was her only anchor to reality. She didn't turn to face me immediately. There was a hesitation in her posture that spoke louder than any words. Her scent hit me before she did. That unmistakable cologne. His cologne. The musky scent that had no place in our home. A betrayal lingered in the air, thickening the space between us. "Work ran late," she said, her voice wavering, desperate to maintain a facade that she knew was slipping. "Work," I repeated, my gaze never leaving the shadows on the ceiling, my mind calculating the lies she had told before, each one more transparent than the last. "Yeah, a last-minute client meeting," she continued, the words spilling out unconvincingly. She dropped her purse on the console table, the sound of it thudding against the wood barely registering against the rising tension in my chest. She tried to walk past me, but I stood up, blocking her path. The space between us felt immense, though I could see her small frame quiver as if it were shrinking in my presence. For the first time in years, she looked uncertain, like a child caught in a lie. "Is that what we're calling it now?" I asked, my voice eerily calm. I stood tall, imposing. She had never seen me this way. She opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off before another lie could escape. "Your vanity mirror," I said, gesturing toward the stairs. "Go. Take a look." Her brows furrowed, confusion and fear mixing in her eyes. She hesitated, but I didn't move. Finally, she trudged upstairs, each step heavier than the last, and I followed closely behind, every step deliberate. She knew what was waiting for her. When we reached the bedroom, I leaned against the doorframe, my arms crossed, watching her approach the mirror. There, taped to the glass, was a collection of photographs. They were arranged with clinical precision, a timeline of her betrayal. Her and him, laughing over dinner at a hotel, holding hands in a parking lot, locked in a kiss just outside the hotel's entrance. The timestamps on each image were damning. She gasped, her hand flying to her mouth, and she ripped one of the photos from the mirror, staring at it as if she could erase the evidence by sheer will. Her eyes filled with tears, but they didn't stir any sympathy in me. I had seen enough. "How long?" I demanded, my voice low but unwavering. She turned to face me, her lips trembling as the reality of the moment hit her. "It's not what it looks like," she stammered, her voice cracking in the silence of the room. She could hardly look at me. "Not what it looks like," I repeated, my voice rising, gaining strength with each word. "You've been sleeping with him for months, haven't you? Don't lie to me. I've got more than just pictures." Her face crumbled, and she sank onto the edge of the bed, her sobs muffled by her hands. I could hear the quiet, broken sounds of her tears, but they meant nothing to me now. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she whispered, as if that would somehow make it better. "You made a choice," I said, my voice steady, cold, almost mechanical. "Every single time, you chose to betray me." Her sobs filled the space between us, but I couldn't find it in myself to care. I had spent weeks gathering the pieces, hiring a private investigator when her excuses started to pile up. Her affection had waned, and each revelation had been a dagger. But tonight, I didn't feel the pain. Tonight I was numb. I had passed the point of heartbreak. Now I was a man with a plan. "Who is he?" I demanded, my tone growing colder. Her face twisted in panic, and she shook her head, almost pleading. "It doesn't matter," she said. "He's no one." I ended it. "Who is he?" I repeated, my tone leaving no room for escape. She hesitated, the fear in her eyes giving way to defeat. Finally, she whispered, "Mark. Mark." The name hit me like a slap. Mark, the charming sales representative from her office, always too quick to laugh, always too friendly at company parties. My jaw clenched. Streamed through the windows. It wasn't the life I had envisioned, but it was a new beginning. And that was enough. "Stay here," I ordered, grabbing my keys from the dresser. I didn't look at her again. "Don't you dare leave this house." She tried to stop me, panic creeping into her voice. "What are you going to do?" "What I should have done months ago," I said, slamming the bedroom door behind me. Mark's apartment was a sterile, cookie-cutter building on the other side of town. It took me no time to find his unit. A quick call to the private investigator had given me all the details I needed. When I pounded on the door, it echoed down the hallway. It took him a moment to answer. He looked disheveled, wearing a t-shirt and sweatpants, his hair messy like he'd just rolled out of bed. The look on his face shifted from annoyance to surprise to unease when he saw me standing there. "Dan," he asked cautiously, "what are you doing here?" I didn't waste time on pleasantries. Instead, I shoved past him, forcing my way into his apartment. "We need to talk," I said, my voice dripping with menace. His face went pale. "If this is about work." "It's about CLA," I interrupted. His blood drained from his face as he connected the dots. "You didn't think I'd find out?" I said, stepping closer. "You thought you could sleep with my wife and get away with it?" I didn't mean to hurt you, man," he stammered, backing away. "Hurt me?" I repeated, incredulous. "You've been sleeping with my wife, and you think you can apologize for that?" Before he could say another word, my fist connected with his jaw, sending him stumbling backward into the coffee table, knocking over a lamp. "You destroyed my marriage," I said, standing over him as he groaned in pain. "You think you can walk away from this without consequences?" "Please," he begged, holding up his hands in surrender. "I'll do anything. Just don't hurt me." I leaned down, grabbing him by the collar. "You're going to call her," I said, "right now. You're going to tell her it's over. And then you're going to quit your job. I don't want you anywhere near her." He nodded frantically, his hands shaking as he scrambled for his phone. He dialed her number with trembling fingers. When she answered, I could hear her voice faintly from the other end. "It's over," he said, his voice trembling. "Don't call me again." He hung up, looking up at me with pleading eyes. "It's done," he said, his voice desperate. "Please just go." I released him and stepped back. "If I ever see you again," I said, my voice cold, "you'll regret it." He nodded, too afraid to speak, and I turned, slamming the door behind me as I walked out. When I returned home, CLA was waiting for me in the living room. Her eyes were red, swollen from crying. She looked up at me as I entered, her expression a mixture of guilt and desperation. "Dan," she began, but I held up a hand to stop her. "I don't want to hear it," I said, my voice flat. "Pack your things. You're leaving." Her face crumpled, and she shook her head. "Please," she begged. "We can work through this. I made a mistake, but I love you. I'll do anything to fix this." "You love me," I repeated, the bitterness in my voice sharp. "You don't destroy someone you love. You've already done enough damage, CLA. There's no coming back from this." I turned and walked upstairs, leaving her sobbing in the living room. The next morning, she was gone. Her suitcase was missing, along with a few of her belongings. She had left a note on the kitchen counter, but I didn't bother reading it. For the first time in months, the house felt peaceful. I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat at the dining table, watching the sunlight.